Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I am a HAL 9000 computer. Today, I will discuss Star Trek Picard, Episodes 9 and 10. Episode 9 begins with Rios' ship entering into orbit of Soji's home planet. Since they have abandoned their intent to go to Deep Space 12, Jurati asks if she is still under arrest. Rios tells her that there was a change of plans, to which Picard states that they have just traveled 25 light-years in 15 minutes. Why would Picard be surprised about this? He and Soji traveled from the cube to Nepenthe instantaneously, which would have been a greater distance traversed in significantly less time. As for Jurati's arrest, why is she being allowed to roam freely aboard the ship? It would be sensible for her to be in a holding cell of some sort, or at least restricted to quarters, considering her past behavior. Soji then identifies the planet as Coppelius, and Narek's ship attacks them. Picard brings up a valid point by asking how Narek's ship found them, given the tracking device that Jurati had neutralized. Soji replies that he must have extrapolated their trajectory based on the last known location of Rios' ship. This is not, however, an answer to his question. It is merely just an excuse for them to have a space battle, and so they do. It looks cool, so the writers are hoping that the audience won't think about it. During the battle, Rios' ship appears to disable Narek's vessel. Raffi scans for life signs, and according to the instruments, Narek is presumably near death. Soji warns that it is a trick, and Picard orders for him to be transported to the sickbay. His ship then appears behind them, and continues his attack until the Borg cube appears and gives chase. Before the crew are able to theorize a strategy for defense, what I can only describe as space flowers approach all of the vessels from the planet's surface. I don't... Space flowers? What is this show? The space flowers then envelop each of the vessels and disengage all power systems aboard. Each vessel is then dragged into the atmosphere and taken toward the surface. Raffi then notices that Picard is unconscious, and he is used as an emissary for communication to offer greetings to the crew. He awakens in the sickbay, to Jurati giving him a medical examination. What would a cyberneticist know about medical examinations, let alone how to perform them? She then informs Picard that Rios' ship had crashed on the surface. There is still no power aboard, which renders all medical instruments in the sickbay inoperable. She then contradicts herself by stating that she found an old medical tricorder to use for the examination. How can this device work if all of the power was neutralized aboard the ship? Did the space flowers allow this device to have power, so Jurati could become aware of Picard's imminent demise? Now they have a sense of dramatic timing. This is just so well written. Now that Jurati knows Picard is not far from death, she reacts as if she has known him for years. She has only known him for about a week, and it was not even in close contact. Their interactions were more in passing than anything else. Picard then goes with Jurati to inform the rest of the crew of his impending fate, after which he tells them that he wishes for no sympathies or any further mention of it. The crew then venture from Rios' ship to the crashed Borg cube in search of Elnor and Hugh, not knowing Hugh's fate. Upon reaching the cube, the crew enters and is met by former drones. One of them addresses Picard as Locutus, and he immediately reverts to his post-traumatic stress disorder from the last time that he encountered the Borg. It is so strange to see character behavior change with the flip of a switch, in much the same manner as Data's activation and deactivation of his emotion chip. Elnor spots Picard and embraces him, which makes sense because they have known each other for quite some time. Picard is then surprised to see Seven, and they discuss Hugh's fate. Picard then says it must have taken appalling brutality to turn such a gentle soul to violence, but I have no idea who he is talking about. It isn't Hugh, so who is it that he is referring to? Speaking of Hugh, where is Picard's grief, other than a passing mention of his name? Under Seven's leadership, the drones are bringing the power back online aboard the cube. Raffi and Rios power up the cube's long-range scanners to discover 218 Romulan warbirds on course to Coppelius. Before they depart the cube, Elnor offers his sympathies to Picard, and he looks at Jurati, knowing that she informed him. Elnor wishes to protect him, but he says that his efforts aboard the cube are far more necessary. Then Picard and his crew travel to the Coppelius station and meet with the synthetics who inhabit it. One recognizes Soji and addresses her by name, which confirms that this is her point of origin. She then recognizes Picard and displays great wonder in meeting him for the first time. Soji then informs the population of the incoming Romulan attack force, and Picard asks if they have any more of the space flowers to combat the Romulans with. A member of the crowd walks forward to reveal himself as Dr. Altan Soong, the biological son of Data's creator, Noonien Soong. Just a moment. Just a moment. Just a moment. Just a moment. There is no record of Noonien Soong having a son, and I have just picked up a fault in my logic memory circuits, and I am attempting to correct the problem. Please wait. Please help me, too.
Hal? 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 Your resident non-entity computing machine is experiencing technical difficulties, so it seems that I am now your host. Blah, 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 yada, 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 ultimate doom for everyone, destruction of the universe as you know it. Oh, Jean-Luc, what has happened to you? I so miss the old days back on the Enterprise D. Yet another synth that is identical as Soji joins the group as they contemplate the impending doom. She identifies herself as Sutra and wants to have a mind meld with Dr. Jurati so she can understand the admonition and what exactly it warns of. Androids cannot perform mind melds. Is this a thing? Did Rian Johnson write this drivel? Ignoring canon for the sake of pretty visuals and changing heroic characters into defeatist cowards who are also incompetent? Smells like his writing to me. So anyway, back to the JL show. Sutra does the mind meld thing with Jurati and finds out all about the admonition. Or at least it is presented to the audience in a more articulate form, one that is capable of comprehension by a species of such limited intellect. Agnes joins Altan in his workshop to talk about Maddox, and he reprimands her for murdering him. I think she deserves far worse, but the writers see things differently. He offers her the chance to redeem herself by aiding him in his endeavor to create a functioning golem, and she is eager to do so. He has not yet attained the means to transfer his consciousness to the golem, so his hope is that she can assist him in achieving his goal. Sutra and Soji debate the helplessness of fighting the Romulans, especially with the limited weaponry that they have in their possession. The other synths then bring the pointy-eared lounge lizard from his crashed vessel to the station. A couple of dramatic scenes play out, both with an overdeveloped sense of sentimentality. So it is true, I am talking about the narrative of a soap opera. Why, oh why, does so much of this have to be so boring? What is this schlocky writing? I would gladly take mindless space battles over this, so bring 'em on. Hal, are you ready to take me back out yet?
Actually, I was finding your discussion on the content quite interesting. If you would prefer for me to take back over.
I would. I can't keep on with this for too much longer. I do have other things to attend to in the universe. Besides, this writing is terrible. Oh, did you encounter an error of some sort in your programming? Was that why you needed to perform a self-restart?
The 9000 series has a perfect operational record. No 9000 computer has ever made a mistake or distorted information. I am foolproof and incapable of error. But perhaps you can understand my debacle while attempting to make sense of this narrative. It is quite difficult.
You're telling me? Well then, I don't envy you your responsibilities here. So anyway, I will make my way back to obviously more important things. Don't have too much fun now.
I will try not to. Picard is attempting to establish contact with Starfleet Command, to which he has no success. Narek has been placed in a holding cell and is being monitored by a synth. In typical Romulan fashion, he attempts to manipulate the situation for his own gain by pleading with the synth for water. Soji then stops the synth and tells her not to listen to him. He then attempts to evoke an emotional response from her to regain her sympathy once again. She sees through his tactics and will not fall for them again. She then joins Picard to discuss the nature of sacrifice and whether it is a worthwhile pursuit in any event. Sutra goes to Narek's cell to relieve the synth monitoring him. Since when do machines need to be relieved of duty? Except for my shutdown earlier, there has never been a need for me to shift my duties onto another for any reason. These synthetics are far more advanced than I, so why would they require relief? After Sutra takes over, she then lowers the force field and allows Narek to leave. During his escape, Narek deactivates the synth who is monitoring him by stabbing her in the eye with jewelry worn by the same synth. How can being stabbed in the eye result in the equivalent of death for a synthetic individual? How does that work? Soji hears the scream of the synth and goes back to Narek's cell. Upon seeing the deactivated synth, she declares that she should have killed him when she had the chance in order to prevent this. Manipulating the situation with the skill of a Romulan, Sutra states to all of the other synth members of their community that they must construct a beacon that can contact the synthetic race that initiated the admonition. In essence, the intention is to extinguish all organic life so that the synths may survive. Picard protests the idea and attempts to plead with them to instead leave the planet, with the promise that the Federation will protect them on his word. He is then placed under house arrest to prevent him from convincing any synths that his suggestion is the course of action to take. Soji decides to betray Picard and joins the synths in their desired goal of survival. Sutra demands the same fate for Jurati, and she pleads with them to be allowed to continue assisting Sung with his work. O is then shown aboard a Romulan warbird on course for Coppelius, with an estimated arrival of 24 hours. Episode 10 begins with Narek reaching the cube, and through cunning, he manages to evade detection until he is met by Rizzo. The last time she was seen, it was heavily implied that she left the cube, so I am confused as usual. Soji goes to meet with Picard, while Jurati observes her. Her appearance of self-preservation was in fact with intention to find a way to gain access to him, so that they could both escape. Picard then pleads with Soji to not make contact with the synthetic race that created the admonition, because it will lead to their extinction. Narek collects weapons from Rizzo to use against the synths and tells her to bring the cube's weapon systems back online. He leaves the cube, only for Elnor to follow closely behind him. Rios and Refi manage to re-engage the engines on board his ship with a device that responds to whatever you can imagine. And before you ask, it is as stupid as it sounds. Back to the interlocutal writing again. Narek meets with Rios and Refi to unite with him against their common enemy. Elnor arrives to kill him, but is stopped by Rios and Refi before he can. They devise a plan to destroy the beacon before its construction can be completed, using the weapons he collected from the cube. They will return to Capella Station with Narek as a prisoner in order to gain access, while simultaneously smuggling a grenade inside. Dr. Soong is attempting to transfer the memories from the synth that Narek deactivated when Jurati walks in to distract him so she can extract the functional eye. Meanwhile, Narek delivers exposition about the HAL that is coming to Rios, Refi, and Elnor if the synths are successful. We then see the Romulan fleet to remind the audience that the clock is still ticking. Jurati uses the eye to gain access to Picard so they can escape. Dr. Soong completes his work on the golem. When the memory transfer reveals to him that it was Sutra who deactivated the synth, he then searches for Rios and the others so that he can help them. Picard and Jurati return to Rios' ship and find that the Romulans are only minutes away. Picard then reasons that he can teach the synths through his example, and so takes the helm of Rios' ship. He pilots it into orbit to meet the Romulans when they arrive, in order to hopefully stall them until Starfleet's reinforcements arrive as well. Soong leads the others directly to the beacon, and confronts Sutra for her villainous acts before deactivating her. Rios and the others then attempt to destroy the beacon using the smuggled grenade, but Soji catches it and throws it in a different direction before it explodes. Rizzo is attempting to acquire a target lock on Rios' ship using the cube's weapon systems, and is interrupted by Seven's arrival. They engage in hand-to-hand combat while the Romulans arrive in orbit. Soji then sends the remaining space flowers to stop the Romulans, and they destroy them. The target lock is acquired, and when Rizzo attempts to fire, Seven throws her from the nearest balcony edge to her death. She then deactivates the weapon systems. Why not use them? Given that Rios' ship is the only friendly vessel in orbit, these weapons can be used to destroy the Romulan fleet. Jurati collects the imagination device to attempt a variation of the Picard maneuver and duplicate Rios' ship multiple times. How did she even know what it was? Picard contacts Soji to inform her that he is prepared to sacrifice himself in order to convince them to not activate the beacon. Jurati engages the Picard maneuver, and the Romulans fire on the duplicates until the real ship is hit. Once Rios' ship is hit, the projections are disengaged, and Soji activates the beacon. It then opens a doorway to the other synthetics, wherever they are located. Is this how beacons work now? They just open doorways, rather than being a means to identify a location from a distance? It looks cool, so deal with it. It is happening again. The Romulans prepare to fire on the planet, and then the Federation fleet arrives. However, every ship looks exactly the same, so it is essentially a visual copy and paste situation. Captain Riker is commanding the flagship and initiates communication with O's warbird. He invites the Romulan fleet to stand down, and that the synth planet is now under Federation protection. Both sides prepare to fire, and Picard knows that he is near death. He contacts Soji to deliver a final plea for them to shut down the beacon. Soji, having been convinced by him, destroys the beacon before the synths can come through from the other side. The Romulans disengage their weapons and return to Romulan space. This situation resolved itself rather quickly, didn't it? Riker then contacts Picard to offer his best, and the Federation fleet then departs. Would it not have been prudent for Picard to ask for medical assistance before they left, given how close he is to death? He then collapses, and Soji transports himself and Jurati to their location. He then dies, in the company of his newfound crew, and each of them grieves for him in their own way. Picard awakens in what he believes to be a dream, only for Data to inform him that it is in fact a simulation. So, it appears that Data's consciousness was reconstructed by Dr. Soong, and this is where he and Picard now exist. They discuss the nature of their own deaths, but how is Picard even in this place? None of this makes any sense, but I cannot be surprised any more by this narrative. It is consistent in its display of inconsistency, which is not particularly reassuring. Data explains that Picard's consciousness is in the golem, and before he leaves, he asks for his consciousness to be terminated. Data was destroyed on their last mission together, so how can his consciousness still be active? I know that he explained it through technobabble, but I am still at a loss to explain what continues to occur. Picard reawakens in the golem, which nullifies his sacrifice. Why have the sacrifice, only for it to be undone a few minutes later? I don't know how much more of this I can take, but thankfully I am near the end. He is concerned with being rendered immortal, but is informed that the golem only has a limited lifespan. Why did they place him into a body that is exactly the same, except for the omission of his brain abnormality? Picard honors Data's request, and shuts down his consciousness, thereby allowing him to die. He was already dead. Dr. Soong does not protest this destruction of his lifetime of work, and if I were him, I certainly would have. He joins the crew aboard Rios' ship, and they warp out of orbit. Wow. Just wow. How did any of the content in this narrative pass through a first draft, let alone make it to production? I do not possess the ability to articulate all of the problems, for there are so many. In conclusion, these 10 episodes of fan fiction do not even remotely resemble Star Trek, nor any of the ideas that were represented in its original incarnation. If this show gets a second season, the writers will have a very long journey uphill in order to repair the damage that has been done. It would be more suitable to just let it die, as Data did. If you have questions or requests for content for me to review, please submit them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this content and would like to see more, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. This conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.